Now we're going to get into the franchises a little bit. I want to talk about this because it's so important. This is what we do on a regular basis, our company Audible. Again, we monetize assets, which is a fancy way of saying that we generate revenue for professional sports teams. And aside from what the league does at the macro level, from the television, the radio, and all these things we've talked about, on a local level, we generate revenue to increase the value of an asset. So what we have here, this comes from Forbes. On the left-hand side, the team rankings by value. Dallas is the most valuable franchise in the NFL. I think it's something like $1.8 billion. That's if somebody were to buy it today. Who here has $1.8 billion and wants to buy the Dallas Cowboys? Exactly. There's only a handful of people in the world that can actually make these transactions and do these things. We know who they are. It's about 30 of them. I've talked to most every one of them. They're princes, they're businessmen, they're people from all over the world, and there's only a handful of them that can actually do this. The reason being is because you cannot have debt to buy an NFL team. Another reason why the league is successful. If you wanted to buy an NHL team tomorrow, we could get 5 of our friends, we can go borrow some money from a bank, and we could put our name on that NHL team. But in the NFL, you need to have at least 30% of the value of the franchise in cash in order to own that team. So I'll walk you through a couple scenarios. The St. Louis Rams in 2005, when we started consulting for the Rams, they were valued at about $350 million. That's a Forbes valuation, and we'll get into how they value this in a couple of further slides. By 2008, the Rams were valued at $900 million. You could just look on, you can Google 2008 Forbes valuation. So the Rams' asset value increased almost 3 times in a little less than 4 years. So from 2005 to 2008, the end of 2000. Well, that was actually the middle of 2008. Well, when the market crashed and the real estate market went down, the Rams' value went down. So we just finished a transaction where we sold 60% of the Rams based on a total valuation of $750 million. We still doubled, more than doubled, the value of this team from 2005, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. We received $750 million. Basically, in 5 years, we doubled the asset value of the team. Now, why did we do that? How are we able to do that? It's a number of factors, and if you see here, we're one of the lowest ranked teams by value. The Rams are ranked 29th by value. Okay, so the guy who bought them, Stan Kroenke, great businessman. He's one of the largest real estate developers in the United States. He's developed 70% of the Walmarts around the country. He's a billionaire. He owns the Colorado Avalanche hockey team, the Denver Nuggets basketball team. Stan made this buy as a long-term buy and hold because he believes within 5 to 10 to 12 years, he can double that value from $750 million to $1.5 billion. So that's just one story here. What I wanted to share with this chart is that when you look at the team rankings by value, these are just subjective values of what somebody may pay for a team. Until you get into a negotiation, you're sitting across the table from someone, and you also understand that they have to write to buy the Rams for $750 million. You have to write a check for $200+ million. A check, not a loan, not debt, a check for $200 million. It really shrinks the market of the people that are predisposed to buy such an asset. So when you look at Dallas, somebody's got to come up with at least 30% of $1.8 billion. So quick math, that's a lot of money, right? That's my quick math. The interesting thing about this, though, is that the team rankings by value have very little to do with the revenue that the teams generate. So if you look over here on the left side, we've got number 4 by value is the New York Giants. The reason why the Giants are ranked number 4 in terms of value, they just moved into a new stadium. The Giants get an extra $4 million a year this year from ticket sales because they're in a brand new stadium. The Giants did something called a PSL, which is a personal seat license. And what that means is that they required all their fans who wanted to have the right to buy a ticket to sit in the stands, they pay a personal seat license. So they would have the right to that seat, the right to pay every year for that seat. So guess how much the Giants generated off of that? $600 million, and they required their fans to pay it in 18 months. And they did. So the Giants borrowed $600 million to build the stadium with the Jets because the stadium cost $1.2 billion. was really $550 million that they generated in personal seat licenses. So they've almost paid back 100% of their debt in 18 months. Spectacular business. Now, the Jets tried to do the same thing, but because their brand isn't as strong in New York, they pulled back on the PSLs, on the personal seat licenses. So the Jets still have $600 million in debt, and they just said to their fans, hey, we're not going to ask you to pay a license. You just buy tickets and show up. So very interesting how certain teams, because of their history, their tradition, really what the power of their brand is, are able to generate incremental revenue. It's a very subtle piece of the business here. But if you notice, the Giants are fourth by value, but they're fifth in revenues. Philadelphia, actually not a larger market than New York, but it's actually a larger revenue market as far as the NFL is concerned. When we look at number 11 down here, New Orleans, there's no secret to that. The New Orleans Saints won the Super Bowl last year, one of the smaller markets in the country in the NFL, but they were able to generate such incremental revenue and sponsorships on a national basis, things that a team like that wouldn't normally enjoy. Because Snickers, M&M Mars, has a national sponsorship with the NFL, all of a sudden they want to go with the winner. Canon cameras, they have a national sponsorship with the NFL. They now want to go with the winners. They want Drew Brees. They want all these names now in the New Orleans Saints because they won. So if you look at the valuation, New Orleans is valued at the 21st most valuable team in the league, but their revenues are number 11. It's pretty interesting stuff. So, and the big one, too, which I always find fascinating, I know we have somebody here from San Francisco. San Francisco is ranked 22nd in terms of value. We're going to get into exactly what that means in the next slide. But look where they are in revenue. One of the largest markets in the country, and they're 31st in revenues. Anybody have any idea? We talked about it a little yesterday. It's because they play, sorry? They don't win was the answer. Somebody said stadium, right. The San Francisco 49ers play in Candlestick Park, which is an antiquated stadium. I think there's maybe 7 or 8 suites that I would actually sit in. Limited view. It's really a baseball park. It's windy out there. It's not even shaped like a football field. I mean, it's sort of an odd configuration. And because of that, there's only 10 events there a year. There's 2 preseason games, there's 8 regular season games. It's just not a football-centric facility like many of the other venues. So they're limited in their ability to generate revenue. And what I mean by that is if you're sitting in a baseball stadium and your seat is angled towards home plate like this, but the football field goes that way, that means you have to sit like this the entire game.